Oh, have you got a co-host, Danielle, to
I don't, but I don't
watch?
think it's necessary.
You'll just watch for people. Cool.
Yes, I don't think it'll be an issue.
No worries. I'm not logging in.
Um, Morning, everyone. Let's get into a FHIR Work Group meeting. I've got the agenda on screen. And today's agenda, we're going to go through approval of minutes. Then we've got updates. There's also 2 PSSs for review and approval. There's the AU base R6 and the eRequesting R1 PSSs. I think, and then we're going into a number of outstanding change requests, some of which have been discussed in previous meetings and continue on to this one. Others, I think, are new. So there is a whole set of these. It is very unlikely we'll get through all of them and will therefore defer a set of things. I don't know how we have actions at the bottom of a page since we haven't undertaken the minutes yet. Scribe Douchey, could you clear this bit up so that we don't have actions in the minutes yet?
No worries. We'll do
Thank
that.
you. Can I ask for those people on the line, is there anything missing from this agenda that you would like to discuss today? Or is there anything that, due to your availability, you would need to be bumped up that agenda list to make sure that we could discuss it? Ruben.
Thanks, Danielle. I've got to leave at 1:30, so if we could get to what looks like is at the top, the action on Marika and I around medication and the one
Okay.
on Michael and I around SDCU before then, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. All right, so let's proceed with this agenda, noting we're going to try to get to those first when we get through actions. But first off, let's do approval of minutes. Now, there are 3 sets of minutes for approval. All of these are complete. They've been sent round for review and are ready for us to approve. First off, let's do this one. This is from the 12th of March. And this has the attendees. All the feedback has been addressed now. It's got the slides, the decisions, and a discussion in there. Does anyone need more time to review this before we look to approve? Hearing nothing, would someone like to motion approval of the minutes from the 12th of March?
Sure,
I will
I'll
motion. Sorry.
Thank you. That was David.
I
Yep,
will second
David
that.
McKillop.
And Brett will second. Any other comments or questions while I go to the poll? All right, I'm launching that poll now, so you should see that in front of you. If you don't have access to it, please put your vote in the chat. All right, I'm going to count that down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll, share the results. I don't think there's anything in the chat. So we have 5 affirmative, 0 negative, 7 abstain. The motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Yes, Richard?
Well, I mean, yeah, somehow your name got attached to this phone number.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
I don't think that was
there-
right.
I've got a couple of minutes, but that's
He
about
needs to go on mute.
I will. Oops. Sorry, Andy. I hit mute on the wrong person. I've just muted Richard. All right. Let's go on to the next set. So the one after that is the 9th of April. This has also been sent round to review. It's got our attendees And we've also got the recording and any of the decisions made, discussion and the actions. Does anyone need more time to review that or any requested changes? All right, would someone be happy to motion approval of these minutes?
Sure, I can. Dave McKillop.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
David.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marika. I will now relaunch that poll. Okay, you should see that in front of you. Okay, I'm going to count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll, share the results. We have 8 affirmative, 0 negative, 3 abstain. The motion carries. Those minutes are passed. And let's get on to the last set of minutes, which is our last meeting. These ones here. So this is from the last set. We've got our attendees here. This is where we'd highlighted the fact that the AU-based PSS and the walkthrough. We've got all the content discussions. There were a number of decisions taken that have been captured, where we closed some items and have deferred others. Does anyone need more time to review these before we approve? Hearing none, would someone like to motion approval?
I will motion, Brett.
Thank you, Brett. Would someone like to second approval of these minutes?
I can second. Steve Swinsburg.
Thank you, Steve. I will now relaunch that poll. Okay, that should be available. And I'll count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll and share the results. So we have 5 affirmative, 0 negative, 7 abstain. The motion carries. Those minutes are passed. Approved, actually. Thank you, everyone. We are now up to date on our minutes, which is exciting. Let's get on to updates. So, Ruben, did you want to go first?
I might actually hand to Marika to speak to the meds one. She's kind of been leading that. I've been on leave and really just responded to her yesterday, if you don't mind, Marika.
Yeah, absolutely, Ruben. Thanks. So I also was on leave and we've had overlapping leave, which is why we're coming back to this from March. But Ruben and I have gone and put together a series of questions. Here's the thread in Zulip that has, I guess, our proposal and 3 questions for polls. So we'd really appreciate feedback on that. I'm not sure, do we need to elevate circulating this at all? Like we've done with other things, or is it sufficient for us to just put it out there and hope that people respond? I guess the next step would be, once we get some responses closer to the next FHIR working group, I'm putting that into a JIRA, which addresses the second item, but it's basically all the things that we discussed. We've got some proposed additional context that we'd like to add and the proposed changes, and just looking at usage. I think that's all I have to add on this one. I guess the only thing I'm asking is, does this need to be circulated, or are we happy to just put it out to the universe and wait for responses?
I would think that this should be circulated using the FHIR Work Group list.
Yep. Awesome. Would someone who is a formal member be able, one of the HL7 guys be able to circulate this using or one of the people who control the mailing list be able to circulate this?
Brett, are you happy to take an action there as FHIR Work Group co-chair?
Absolutely. That's good. We can circulate that.
Perfect. Thank you. And then once we have some more responses, I should be able to update people ahead of the next meeting on where that's at, and put it all into a JIRA so we can make the change request.
I think this is also relevant to the AU core TDG. I'm happy to take an action to confirm with the AU core TDG co-chairs that they think that it should also be circulated to the AU core TDG. And then they can send out an email, or it can be, Brett, when you send it out, it could be to both mailing lists.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Danielle.
All right, so we've got 2 actions on the minutes that we can report back on our next FHIR Work Group meeting.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so that's those top 2, and then there was another one, Ruben, I thought that you had highlighted.
It was the SPCU one, which is sort of in the middle of that list. Michael, I was going to discuss SPC extension with Ruben.
Okay, Michael, Ruben, can you provide us with updates?
Michael, do you want me to go and you can up and tell it?
So just introducing Ruben here because I was given a bunch of questions to ask about SPCU and its scope and role here. So I'm happy to hand that over to Ruben now.
Right. Thanks, Michael. All right. So I've got a set of questions which I'll try and provide some answers to here. The first one was, how important is it? And I take that to mean, how important is it to include SPU in AU base? I think through eRequesting, we've established the importance of this parameter in a clinical sense. And my response to that would be that eRequesting is unlikely to be the only Australian FHIR IG that's likely to benefit from the adoption of SPU. And for that reason, I think it makes sense to include it in AU base, along with an explanation of how to use it correctly, which will ensure that this extension and in fact the data element is better socialized and it's used standardized in Australia, which I think is pretty important. So I'll pause there and see if that answers that question appropriately.
It
Okay,
likely does.
Okay, I'll move on. The next one is, how hard is it to do? Now, I think the first thing to say is it's a lot easier since they updated the International FHIR Extensions Pack, because this extension previously used an R5 data type, which would have made adoption in R4 IGs like AU base a lot trickier, not impossible, but certainly a lot trickier. They've since changed it, so it's only using R4 data types. So to the question in terms of how hard it is to do, my thinking around this is really, I think the work would amount to determining which of the AU-based resource profiles the extension could reasonably be added to as an optional parameter. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking AU medication request, AU-based diagnostic request, and the other service request type profiles. We'd need to look at that. We'll need to determine whether there are any conformance points we'd like to add around its use. One that springs to mind is a discussion and decision regarding whether we want to support SPCU as an element of the patient resource type. There are solid arguments in both directions, and we should probably think about that if we're going to include this in AU base. And then obviously adding some guidance regarding the use of it to the sex and gender guidance page, which is already part of AU base. So there's a bit to do there. I don't think any of it's particularly hard, but there are some things to do, and I guess that needs to be weighed up against the time we have for the next version of AU base. Any questions on that one?
I have a question in general. What criteria do we use to add an extension that, sorry, this is not our extension, this is the international extension. So what criteria do we have to add reference to an international extension into an AU-based resource, given that adding it in winds up being purely informative.
In
I'm not arguing
summary-
against this. I'm just wondering what criteria we have for that.
In summary, we've and it's really only in minutes rather than us having a clearly defined kind of principles for inclusion page. We have consistently made decisions on the basis of recognizing the value and utility of a particular extension for use in Australia and where we have localization guidance. And that is where it ends up being included in AU base.
Right. So this we will want to have some localization guidance in the resource, and that winds up being, yeah, important to have something to hang that off. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question, Richard. I think it's a very good one, and perhaps something we need to think about in the future. But as Danielle said, some sort of firm principles around that sort of thing. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll go to the next question. Well, actually, the next ones are pretty easy. So they are, who will lead any discussions and who will draft content facilitation and PRs and so forth. And I'm happy to put myself forward to do those or to work with others to do those. I think the only other question was when I can talk about this, and that was today. So I think that's the sum of it. Michael, did you want to add anything else?
I think I'm happy with what you've said there, Ruben. So that's fine.
Okay.
Right, that sounds really good. I think we've answered that, and we can tick off. If I just go back to where that was originally raised, I think we can tick those actions now as done.
Yep.
Confirming the intent, and I think there's discussing it there, so we can tick those now and have that marked off. And I think in terms of timing, that's probably quite apt to just confirm we're here. We would need to get approvals internally to go to ballot. Actually, Brett, are you going to present on that, on our time frame remaining and which meetings we need to finish content closure in when you're presenting the AU-based PSS?
I've got a list, but I hadn't really got a plan, but we can work it out. Yep.
Okay, it's probably better to leave it to that confirmation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that covers off the first few, noting there's also, I think we can, on this one, which I know, Michael, you have indicated this is relevant, you're going to continue working on that. I would suggest, I'm not sure we need to keep tracking this as an action and instead await a JIRA proposal.
Yeah, sure. I've created those up, but they're not on the agenda, so I won't talk to them today.
Does anyone have any problem with us taking this off the agenda item now that work is actually underway and we simply have to put the JIRA on an agenda? All right, well, let's tick that so it's not, just hanging around every time. And move on to this one. Marika and Richard, we weren't sure whether or not this action had been completed and what its current state was.
So I followed up with Richard, and I think between we had alternating leave and personal things. So Richard is now following some agency leaves, starting to do that this week. So I can tick that off as an action, but I guess once Richard comes back with anything, I can move the MBS code system work forward.
Okay. All right.
Richard, do you have anything to add? I think that's about where it's at.
No, I think you've captured it quite nicely. Thank you.
Cheers.
The next action item is FHIR Work Group co-chairs to triage backlog items and follow up and confirm relevance and importance and ownership. This is an ongoing item. There was a number worked through in the previous meeting. This isn't done. So this action needs to continue to be reported on until that is complete. So it's ongoing, basically. Next one, Danielle and Andy to schedule and lead an information session on use of coverage resources, on use of resources, including coverage, claim and related use cases. This is partially to address outstanding needs to take coverage to AFMM1 and consider how and when claim a profile on claim could move forwards. We have not done this, so this action item is open. Andy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, still relevant. We just need to get around to doing it.
Yep. Next action item, I believe this is you, Brett, to report on the licensing policy updates.
That has not progressed. So I'll catch up with Ruben in the near future. There were some actions just on the ADHA to get some responses on some of the material. So we'll follow up on that one. So no, nothing to report.
Okay, so we'll continue tracking that through into the next meeting.
But we did meet
The next
and have a
sorry,
discussion
Andy.
about it.
Yeah.
We're just saying we have progressed because we did
Yeah,
meet and have a discussion about it. So it's something positive has happened with it.
Yes.
It's not like it's kind of just.
I've got that minute in a previous meeting, and so this was just an action. So yeah. So I think we just had a couple of things that are outstanding. So yeah, once we have resolved those, we'll come back with the outcome.
So should this continue to be tracked as an action and reported
yes.
back on, or should we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we should
going?
keep doing it. Yeah, keep doing it, and then yeah, it will eventually come back. Cool.
Okay. And next one is also you, Brett. Can you comment on this one?
That is not been actioned at all, and I'll get on to creating that sort of.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we move off actions, is anyone aware of an action that wasn't in this list that is open, should be undertaken, that we've missed out of combing through the previous minutes? All right, I'm not hearing anything. If you do recall anything, please add it to the agenda of the next meeting. And let's go on to the AU base PSS. This is you, Brett. Did you want to share your screen, or would you prefer to direct me?
I'm happy if you share it. It's like there's 2 pages there. So this is the document we did review last time with the intent of making a decision in this meeting. So I think people. So we'll go through it again, but there is the project description. So this is essentially for our release of AU base that's upcoming. So so we need to have a project to work within. So we have essentially the mission of AU base, which I hope everyone knows what that is. So we're supporting other standards and also providing the underlying recommendations for everyone. And so R6 itself is supporting the other releases expected in this cycle. So we've got AU core and eRequesting going out, so we may get impact from that, but we also have some new material that we've added since the R5 release. And there is an assertion here that there are breaking changes from the previous working standard release. So we're intending to publish as 6.00. And the scope, well, is basically a supporting document. And we've got our metadata there. So this is a working standard project. So we continue on with that. We're targeting August ballot and reconciliation after that for a January release. That is all the important things. We do have our project team, which hasn't changed since our previous go around. So we've got nominated individuals there for the roles. We have our listed supporting organisations. So this is continuing support from these organisations as interested well, supporting directly in terms of participating, but also we have other interested parties being the accelerator and government. So other than that, I don't think there's any surprises here. Our project hasn't changed that much. And yeah, so I think at this stage, I would just probably like to take any comments.
Are there any comments or questions for Brett?
I have a question. I
Sure.
presume we did basically the same document for version 5. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a good question.
One of the big differences with that one, this is just out of interest, is we thought in R5 we would be backwards compatible, which is
Yep.
we have, through our lovely scoping workshop, identified that we want to make backwards incompatible changes, which is why this one immediately is proposing a 600. Oops.
Okay.
So I guess if there's no further comment, I will move that we accept the PSS and move
Thank you, Brett. So you've motioned to approve the AU base R6 PSS. Would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second that, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any other comments or questions on this while I move to find the vote? Okay, I'm going to launch the poll for the current motion. Please vote, affirmative, negative, or abstain, or refrain from voting if you are not voting. Okay, I'm going to count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll. We have 10 affirmative, 0 negative, 2 abstain. The motion carries. The AU-based PSS is approved. Now, would you like to comment on some of the timings for this?
Yeah, so
And-
yeah, cool. Okay, so I think we're kind of in a countdown till the next ballot cycle, so we do have a limited number of meetings. I do have a link there to the ballot period information. That is pretty much, I think, locked in now. I don't know, Andy, with the Connectathon, last advice is 1st and 2nd of, oh, it says August there, that should be September in the second date there. So 1st and 2nd of September.
Oh, I can't edit, but go for it.
Yeah, I'll fix that. Yeah, so that is our current set of timelines. So there are some dates to hit there as part of this. So we will need a notice of intent to ballot before balloting. So all the other
That is too
co-chairs from the
late.
groups.
Please note that the notice of intention to ballot has to be approved in the 2nd of July meeting.
Yeah.
So in effect, I mean, yes, that's the date from the board perspective, but in fact, from our perspective, the last meeting that we can approve a notice of intent to ballot for AU base or any other project is the 2nd of July.
Yeah.
And in fact, we can't be doing content work really in the 2nd of July. Content closure happens in this meeting. So we've got 3 meetings to get through all those proposals. It's not many.
So if something is important, you need to get it on the agenda to be looked at. Because otherwise it's going to miss the cut.
Noting Ruben has had to drop off for another call. I might reach out to Ruben and let him know that there are, for the work that needs to be undertaken for SPCU, that we've only got 3 meetings to get any inclusions into base prior to ballot in them.
Yeah, so that's the decisions need to be made. So the actual implementation, there's some more time to get the actual content sorted.
Because the 2nd of July is where that gets notice of intent to ballot is approved and looked at, like everything is done then. So we make decisions on the 18th of June and by this meeting it's done.
Yeah. And we've got some AECOR and TD eRequesting co-chairs here, so that's to be aware as well. Like that's the same criteria that the other publications have, so you'll need to kind of deal with your content and make sure it's all teed up to go. Cool.
This bullet point here, is there something that you wanted to talk to around this list?
Not really, other than if you are considering stuff, that is our backlog. So if there's anything burning in there as well, we've already kind of we actually have cleared out a few things along the way. So we've done okay in terms of managing that list. But if there's things on there that you do want to progress, you'll need to get it on the agenda and present a reason why, basically.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Are there any other questions for Brett before we move to the next agenda item? Okay, next one, let's look at the AUE requesting R1 PSS. Michael, would you like to share your screen or would you like me to present?
Yeah, I'll share my screen. So,
Okay, I'll just stop mine.
let's go. Go on. Okay, hopefully you can see that.
We can.
All right, so this is the project scope statement for eRequesting release 1. Same template. So the project description here, that's unchanged from the original project definition. So it defines eRequesting and the project need as well, about developing a nationally consistent and modern approach to electronic diagnostic requesting in Australia. The key thing here is around the project scope being release 1. So it's diagnostic requesting in an Australian context, defining the minimum expectations on FHIR resource to support conformance and implementation systems, able to define the data model and RESTful API interactions for placing and accessing electronic requests. And the scope of eRequesting R1 will be the support of pathology and medical imaging requests and community-based care provision with consideration for future use beyond that scope. So that scope has been agreed by the TDG. It's our initial release. So there's no previous release, so we're going to create a new R1 standard with a target for publication in February 26. It's governed by the FHIR Work Group, running through the eRequesting Technical Design Group. Got our facilitators there. Project facilitator is me. We've got Tushi, Brett, Michael Osborne, and Heather in there as well. Supporting organisations through Sparked. So then we've got dependencies. So I may need to update these. My original approach for this, for the dependencies, was the minimum dependency for publication, as in we could develop off we could publish off AU base 5.1 and AU core 1. Probably need to update those to AU base R6 and AU core 2. And if there was problems, we could come back from those releases, but assuming that would be our target, to target the latest AU base and the latest AU core. We've got IPS2 in there, and eRequesting DI and AU CDI R1s. And for the compatibility, no backward compatibility, there will be variants from AU base and AU core, so we will develop a various statement. We have a draft currently, but we're going to introduce new profiles that are not in AU core, from that communication request, consent, and task, and also some new extensions to support eRequesting. So we will have a variation statement for that eRequesting. I think that's about it of note. So happy to take any questions.
Will there be an AU CDI R2 that you should pay attention to? Well, sorry, is the timing for AU CDI version R2 such that you should consider it as opposed to version 1?
Well, we're actually building from AU eRec DI R1, which does have a dependency on AU CDI R1. So that's where our focus is. So I understand R2 is in draft at the moment. It's out for consultation. But at the moment, we're building off R1.
Fine.
Michael, can I just ask about the variants? And just to
Yes.
confirm that these are the additional resource types, not actually the variants from AU Core and AU Base?
So let me just see the wording I've got here. Yes, so new profiles that are not represented in AU Base or AU Core.
So in that case, your variance is no.
Yeah.
Additional stuff
Is
isn't
it?
considered variance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought there was a statement in the variance that said if you were doing things that aren't in AU Core or
A
Base.
recommendation, it's not considered variance. You've still got a statement, or it was the last time I looked at it, that there is no variance, you fully comply, noting that there is additional thing. It's more informative
we had to note.
variance.
Yeah. So, but in the variance statement, we have to note the additional things we're doing because it was noted that
Yes.
that would inform back on AU Core and AU Base as to whether they might go into those in the future because we're doing additional things. So that goes in the various variation statement, but what you're saying is it's not variance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so yep, update that one because you are.
So that would be a
pull
no.
it from your IG, which says you have no variance, but you've got the additional things.
Yeah. Okay, so there's no variance, but we will have a variance statement that will document the variances. Yep.
And you don't need to note that in the PSS, though it is welcome that you note the additional content. That's fine, but I think it is important for approval purposes that you are compliant. Yeah. So yeah, just change that one to a yes. Or yes.
A no.
I guess you always have a variance statement. Sometimes it says no variations, and sometimes it says no variations, but some additions.
Yes.
Okay, so here we're just saying there's no variance, but we're introducing some new things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sorry, Brett, your hand's up.
Oh, I was just going to go back to the dependencies list and just clarify what we are actually going to include in those, just to have it noted.
So I think we'll change this one to R6 then, and this will be R2.
Okay. All right, so we've got a noted change. So dependencies there's two changes. I see you're making them now. You've made AU Base R6 and AU Core R2. You've updated the compatibility to be there's no variance, and we've listed the additional ones. Just as a point of project administration, on the top of the title, for the project title, can you just remove release 1? Because the project title stays the same regardless of which release it is. Yeah, perfect.
Is this okay? This is the scope
fine.
statement
That's
for release 1. But,
exactly.
The project title. Yes.
Yep, fantastic. Are there any other comments or questions on this PSS? Okay, then, Michael, I'm assuming you would like to make a motion on the updated PSS that we're now seeing in front of us for approval.
Correct. Yeah, I'd like to motion that we accept this PSS with the amendments that we've just made in the group. And I will resubmit this with the updated straight after this meeting.
Who would like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Angus. I'm now going to go to the poll. Are there any other comments or questions while I relaunch that? Okay, you should see the poll in front of you. Please vote affirmative, negative, abstain, or refrain from voting if you are refraining. Counting that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end the poll. There's no votes in the chat, so that is 12 affirmative, 0 negative, 0 abstain. The motion carries. That PSS is passed. Can we record an action in the minutes, please, just for Michael Wilson to submit the updated PSS? That way we can track reporting back of that action into the next meeting and confirm that's happened.
No worries.
And just noting too that can you put an action on me that they have to be taken to the board as well?
Okay. So an action to be captured on Brett to submit the 2 PSSs to the board. What date should we record against that action, Brett?
Actually, it'll just happen anyway. Once Michael submits it, it will go to the board. So yeah. Dates wise, we do have a board meeting next week, so I will try and get on the agenda for that.
All right.
So hopefully by the next meeting.
So let me just look at the time in a really crappy way in which I've just broken my browser. Good on me. Too many things open as usual. So we've got 45 minutes left, I think, do we, for this meeting? Is that right? Do we finish at 12:30?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, good. All right, so that I think is the administrative portion of this meeting done, and we're now going into the change requests. I'll just do a quick run through to confirm the change requests that are scheduled for this meeting and just double check for the people who are available and what's priority to make sure we target the top priority ones because we don't have that much time. So we've got this first one around AU-based encounter.
Yeah, I think the patient internal identifier one is probably more important than number 6.
All right. If everyone's
So
happy,
definitely
we
move
will
that one on.
move to 7 now and go through that and then revisit the list once 7 is being discussed.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go forwards with that. Michael Osborne, would you like to share your screen for this?
Sure.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Hey,
And
all seeing
do we have
that?
a hand up? Sorry, my Zoom is showing someone with a hand up somehow. No. All right. It's just weird. All right. Sorry. Please progress.
Okay, so it's this ticket proposed by Michael Wilson from eRequesting to add a patient internal identifier. So the actions on me were to create a pull request against AU base. So we've done that. So there's a profile. I'll just quickly flick over to that. So there's the profile. And the other action was to create a discussion on Zulip, which is this one, and that had quite a bit of feedback. I'd just like to summarize some of that feedback and then I'll open it up for discussion. But where are we? Notes. So you're seeing that it's just basically a lot of the feedback was around the need for an organizational namespace scoped patient identifier system URL. So this is to disambiguate it from and basically make it unique. So possibly there's something called a minor practice IDs assigned by Services Australia if that's the scope we want to use. There was another comment that I've used the word system too many times because the system has an overloaded meaning. So I'm happy to change that to application where it means like a system, like a practice management system or something like that. So for example, so this is the profile, and I've just done a quick diagram as to where I should change system to application. You want to have a quick look at that? And
could you
so
go
that
back
would
to that previous page again? I didn't have quite enough time to digest the proposal.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, can you read that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just too slow.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So there's so in the usage, or just above the usage, I talk about a local system like a practice management system, but perhaps that should be application, because system is used quite often for a URI. So it's got an overloaded meaning. So where I talk about a system identifier namespace for the system, it should be for the application that assigned the internal patient identifier. And also the value is the internal application patient identifier.
That last one, maybe the internal application *S patient identifier. Because it's the patient identifier used by the internal application. So I was just thinking a possessive S there might make that clear.
Yeah, happy with that. So that Zulip poll's still open. It's not a poll, sorry, but that Zulip discussion is still open. And with that, I'm happy to open it up, unless you need some more explanation. Open it up to people to discuss.
Michael, could you please go back to the profile?
Yep. Okay, hold on. I'll just flick it over to the actual.
Okay.
Hold on. How do I get rid of that? I just want. Yeah. I'll just show, or maybe I'll just show the picture.
I mean, we can see your screen if you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this one. Yep. Is that okay, Dushi?
Sorry, I'm just reading it now. I think patient identifier local to a system isn't unique. It could definitely apply to many other identifiers, like MRNs, for example. So
That was another.
I don't know if it sufficiently describes the.
Yeah, so that was another
identifier.
point made by Heath. It's like, how is it different to an MRN? I think in the Zulip poll, there's a good discussion there between Heath and Angus around what the differences are. If I can find it. Yeah, so Angus, did you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, so so Heath and I were bouncing back, trying to get some sort of words around it. So I guess I could read what I wrote here. So a medical record number is is intended to be referenced by many systems in a given network or hospital or health service. Its purpose is to identify patients across a network. It's typically associated with a hospital PMI and an ADT feed, which broadcasts updates, manages the record and identifier over time, such as HL7 merge messaging. It's purposely designed to be shared across a given network. So that's a medical record number, where a patient internal identifier, it's a key to a patient within an application. It's not intended to be widely shared across a network and does not come with an ADT feed for ongoing maintenance. It's akin to an application's database primary key for the patient. Yet I would strongly advise against sharing actual database primary keys. In this day and age, it's not a strong identifier. It's not nationally scoped. It's not intended for broad use. It's used at your own risk, which makes it distinct from medical record number. So just to summarize that, like a medical record number is purposely made to be used across many systems to identify a single patient across a network or a hospital system. It's a really strong identifier used for that purpose, where a patient identifier is nothing more than an application saying, in my application, this identifier number 10 references that patient, but it's not it's just a statement, right? It's not saying, and everyone should always use this identifier to reference patient 10. It's just helps other systems identify patients, but it's not strong. It's not managed. It's, it's far weaker. Does that help, Dushi?
Can we get some of these words in the narrative?
It sort of does, but I think it should be included in the
Absolutely, absolutely.
in the profile. And also the question is if the identifier is not designed to be used across multiple systems, is it worth adding a new identifier?
Yeah, then
type
why are we
profile?
sharing it?
Yeah.
I can see that contradiction.
I think it's important to say it's not an MRN, and what the difference, like why is it not an MRN? Yeah.
And that's why I challenged it, right? Is because I think we need to be distinct with what the purpose of this identifier is versus the other one. Ideally, we'd probably have a statement in the other one that kind of compares it to this one, but let's just focus on this one for now. I think that second paragraph, although it could be probably massaged a little bit, in particular that contradictory bit, is probably enough to go into at least a draft version of this.
Cool. It's certainly used today by medical director, best practice. They send us in V2 messages in the PID3 identifier section. They send us PI numbers, which are this. It's effectively the key of that patient in their system. Of course, it's only for that system. Brown Street Surgery has a patient 10 and Green Street Surgery has a different patient 10. And we use it at Sonic really to suggest matched patients. Like if patient return, we scan one e-order and we can find another patient with the same IDs. We kind of like list them and say, oh, are any of these relevant to that order you're doing, like other orders? But we use it in a sense that we know it's not strong. We know we can't just programmatically match on it. It's a way of saying, hey, these are other orders that may be related to that order.
And the value, therefore, okay, hang on, no, I'll come back. I'll go. Brett, did you want to comment on what Angus was saying, or are you raising a different point?
Oh, it's kind of no, go ahead, because I've got a kind of different point. Yeah.
No, I'll, as I'm chairing, have any comments at the end. I guess I was summarizing at this point. I think there's really two separate things here on understanding if we should be adding something into base that isn't necessarily designed. Angus has made some points on the fact that that's interesting. Sure, that it's not designed to be shared, but it is shared. So there's some justification for inclusion. But then there's the other point, which I think hasn't been addressed yet, that what is in the profile doesn't actually conceptually define this identifier as distinct to something else. It just says local to within a system. Lots of identifiers are unique within a particular local system. So the point is being made that an action needs to be taken to address the wording in the description. I think that's where we're up to in our discussion at this point. Is that a fair summary? Have I missed any kind of points there?
No, I agree. We definitely need more description in the profile, and this Zulip thread was us musing and talking and trying to create that content.
All right. So now, Brett, we can change gears. We've got a summary.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, it is kind of related because, like, I think we do just need something clearly talking about uniqueness and scope, because like I guess the system value is defined as the application that assigned the identifier, but that is not location or organization scoped. It's system.
Can I ask a question here?
scope.
You're no longer talking about, and sorry, Michael Osborne, can I ask you to bring up either the picture or actually go to the branch? Either is fine.
Yeah. So in the system,
Brett,
in
can
the
I
system
confirm that
element,
you're not talking about the informative content at the top? You're now talking about the actual structure in the profile itself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the structure, and the words actually make sense. Like if we replace system with application, that makes sense. It's an application assigning things, but that's like saying medical director has assigned this identifier, okay, which is not telling you anything about which clinical service has done it. So it is local scope in the sense that there is this implied local scope that you don't know what it is.
Well, there's a scope. There's a
There's an
scope, and
assigner.
there's
Yeah.
a scope, but it not necessarily local, right? Like it
Yeah.
could be national for Genie, right? Could
Yeah,
be,
sure.
and the
Sure.
system tells
For a
you that.
cloud
If the
system.
system's matched, then they're a match. If they don't, then they're not a match. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're interpreting this out of context of any exchange, right? You've just got a patient with it attached. You will have a whole bunch of these perhaps, because there'll be a bunch of systems with that could possibly supply these. So I don't know. I think it may not be. It's the same as MRNs, right? It's like, how do we know the scope of use and the scope and the same sort of thing. So I just think we need that it does go back to guidance, I think, as well. So I think it's more just having we do have some words in the MRN definition about scoping and HPO scoping. But I think that's a little weak too, but it does at least tell you need to think about scope.
It is weak, though I will interject just before we go to Richard to state that an MRN is intended for sharing and identification, and therefore that's why it has a national thing. I think we're walking a fine line of saying something is truly an internal identifier, but yet seeking a national namespace. It seems quite contradictory to me.
Yeah, I mean, because someone could, like, if you put a GUID in there, like, you've got no problem. It's going to be globally unique. It's really like.
Why would it have to be globally unique?
Yeah, it doesn't. But I'm just saying, like, if you, it's more what the user can expect and how they should treat it. So it's more like clarifying that. I mean, it does say it's unique within a local application. But I think that needs to be hammered home a little bit.
Okay, so you would like some profile-specific implementation guidance, or you're suggesting some guidance. I'll come back to you, but can we hear from Richard on what your point or question is? Richard, comment or question?
Yeah, I've got two things. The quick thing, one is an alternative to application would be to use information system or something or other like that. Because the idea, I mean, you can use an adjective to qualify system rather than replacing system with the word application. I don't know whether that improves or not. The other one is for identifier system. If identifier system works the way identifier system is meant to, you do have an identifier which is as reliably unique as the system that's generating it. This seems to be suggesting maybe, I mean, I guess we've got system as optional. So this is like, here's an identifier and maybe I didn't give you a system because I don't actually have a good string for it. Is that sort of the case that this is trying to talk about?
Which is, and just confirming there, if you see the profile structure, it's proposing that system is optional. This would be the first and only AU-based identifier profile, suggesting you don't have to provide a system, which absolutely does call into question those things that you're kind of, those points.
I think to use this, you'd want to highlight the fact that if you've got an identifier and you don't have a good system, a good string to put in system, you can use this and just hope that the guy at the other end can do something with your identifier value, because you can't give him a reliable identifier system. And maybe that's the use case you're trying to answer. But I'm not sure that's been obvious from the description, if that is what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Richard. Heath?
I acknowledge that there's so much variance around the scopes of potentially these internal identifiers, and there's probably at least the three that come to mind. And I understand your concern about us going down a national system scheme for this, but I do think that if we can provide at least some general guidance, that a system URL that reflects the scope of how the identifier was assigned would be helpful. And whether there's some examples, such as using minor IDs, such as GUIDs, but it needs to reflect the fact that there are at least these 3 levels of assigning authorities using B2 terms, etc. So,
I mean, I think other people might be happy to comment on that. I might at the end. Knowing the FHIR standard talks about how you assign identifier systems, and frankly, you can't be certain it's only those 3 levels. Or rather, that's not necessarily what's even proposed here. It could be anything, and you don't know.
That's why I said at least 3 that I can think of. So within an Australian context.
Oh, I think there's way more than that, but sure. But let's go to Angus.
Yeah, I hadn't realized the system was set to optional. It wasn't really my intent. My intent was that you would still provide a system, and I agreed with what Heath just said, that just advice about system, like some examples. The other thing I was going to say is sort of contradicting about sharing is the way I see it is this is a system sharing its ID to you, receiving that content, but the intent is you not to copy it and put it in the next message and the next message, which you would do with an MRN, right? I don't know if that helps, but when I say it's not to be shared, that's kind of what I mean. Like, yeah, sure, it's shared to you, but don't share it. I'm telling you, but don't share it to everyone else. Where an MRN, you would continue to share to everyone else. So,
but you'd kind of expect it on a response, wouldn't you, to help match?
Well, share it back to the person who gave it to you, but don't share it to a third party.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I guess my main point was there. I'm not sure if I'm on board with system being optional. It seems really weird to give you a value and say nothing about it.
Yeah, that's why I had my hand up too, because I think we should just make that. I think that should be mandatory.
I agree.
Just because otherwise you're really giving your
Rubbish.
uniqueness is just built in the value, and like that's not going to be helpful.
Well, if I've got a local number and I just want to send it to you and say, send it back to me, and this is the scenario you're talking about, this is private to our conversation, we're not spreading it any wider, in which case, don't need system. This is a private conversation.
Yeah, but I think you need to identify
the thing with FHIR is FHIR. The assumption is the stuff will leak, and so you don't actually have reliably private conversations, and so you want the information to be safe even when it's leaked, which then goes against the idea that the whole point of this is to say this is a private conversation.
Well, but even on the V2 message, right, you'll have a message header that says which application is sending it and which ones. When you send it back, you send it back to that application, right? So to me, it's got a application context built in. So you should be able to at least provide that.
Yeah, I think it's a weird world we step into if we have identifiers without systems.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, you only want to have the resource able to do that. So you can say, oh, I've got a bit of data, I don't have the rest, here's what I have, which is not a really good way of doing this sort of communications we want.
It only makes sense in like instance identifiers, like where it's basically just on that instance you have an identifier that, and that would be the only context of use is the instance, right? So I think because you are attaching it to the idea of having an application, so it's related to this application, so you should be able to scope it at least to the application.
Can I ask then, because it seems like the people who have spoken are in pretty broad agreement that one of the changes that should be made to this proposal is that system should be mandatory. Is there anyone who objects to that, and to explain why? All right, well, I think that feedback seems quite clear from this group that systems should be made mandatory. Just to summarize, because looking at time, it seems that systems should be mandatory. There's an expectation that the description and potentially even profile-specific implementation guidance is updated to make this clearly unique about some of the content drawn from the Zulip conversation would need to be undertaken. Are there any other points that need to be addressed before we could revisit this proposal? Heath?
There's some really good guidance in the FHIR standard itself about this data type, and in particular around the use of systems. So I think as a first draft or a first iteration, we could really just reference the data types page for identifier.
I have a comment on that, but we'll go to Richard first.
I'm just thinking that this description for system doesn't seem to improve what's in the FHIR specification. Establishes the namespace for the value. I mean, that seems to be what you're trying to do here.
I think it with because I think it is trying to say the application, right, that assigned. So I think it does go a little bit. It's not just it is what it is. It's more that the application is responsible for that identifier.
So it's carrying two pieces of information. One is it's giving a namespace. The other is it's identifying the application. So if I've got an application which assigns identifiers, and every so often it resets its identifier stream, then on this design, I would keep the same application identifier, even though I've now got a new namespace, because I'd have to have the application identifier with a date time or something or other.
Actually, that's a good point, I think, because it will always be unique within that application, because I know it's not in some systems. Eventually, you'll get repeats.
So I would suggest a path forwards for this is, I think we've got a number of actions to revise the proposal and bring it back to the next meeting for approval. And that could be done offline and get the updated wording and some guidance worked through with the people who have raised some feedback. Michael Osborne, are you happy to undertake that as a series of actions and bring that back to the next FHIR Work Group meeting?
So I can undertake the changes based on the minutes and any actions out of that or any comments out of that, for sure. And I'll update that branch and let everyone know.
Yes, and can we also confirm that there is an expectation there that Brett, Richard, Angus, and Heath, that you are able to provide feedback on that updated branch from Michael, so that when it comes back to the next FHIR Work Group, it addresses what you're looking for. All right.
And just one other topic, that the last part of this profile, the assigner and the display, is I assume we do that elsewhere. It's not something I expected, but I'm not against it. Is there a little bit of confusion between organization that assign this identifier? You know, like if we're talking about Genie installed at Brown Street Surgery, is that Genie or is it Brown Street Surgery? Is it the application, or is it the hosting organization of the application?
I would argue it's aligned with the scope of the system.
I agree. Doesn't say that, but
no.
This all sounds to me like wonderful profile-specific implementation guidance.
Yeah, I agree.
I might need to have to touch base with you on that one, Angus. I understand the difference, but I'm not sure how to represent that in words.
I don't know what we do with MRN produced by iSoft. Like, is it say Melbourne Hospital or does it say iSoft as the organisation? I don't know what we do elsewhere.
Okay.
We don't deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start sharing my screen again and we can go to the next item. Let me just bring that up. Noting we've only got 15 minutes to go. I just clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, so That was Patient Internal Identifier. We've got some actions there to update that proposal. I think put the advertisement on Zulip, and then with the idea that based on the updated proposal, we could look to approve that in the next FHIR Work Group meeting. What would we like to address next? Noting we've really only got 15 minutes. Is there any item in here that we could move through in that time, or that anyone wants to highlight in preparation for the next meeting?
I reckon we could do number 6.
Number 6. All
Yeah.
right. Who's speaking to this? Is this you,
I'll
Brett?
do that one. Yeah, I'll do that one.
Did you want to share your screen, or will I continue?
Oh, you can continue. There's not much to look at other than there's a draft, but we'll probably look at the ticket. Yep. So this is actually an old ticket, but I think it's relatively easily resolved. So we do have an NCTS value set to represent languages which we do apply in patient and practitioner in the communication languages part of the story. And since, but we do not have that binding made in healthcare service, which is one of the elements available in healthcare service. So this ticket is to say, let's add that same languages, Australian Common Languages binding to the healthcare service communication element. I think this is really just advice on what is the appropriate thing to do. So yep, there's a draft. So it's in there.
Oh, you created a draft, sorry.
Yeah, there's a draft link. Yeah, if you click on that,
Okay,
you'll get
here.
the right thing. Yeah. So that's with the binding made. So now you'll see there is a Common Languages binding. Other than that, that is the only addition. So that is really just the recommended. Now it is bound extensively, that's probably worth noting, which is what we've done for patient and practitioner as well. So it's following the same binding strength as the others. So I think, yep, that's
And
it.
it's the same value set as patient.
Same value set.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
same
I know
value set.
why. Yeah, that's what I expected. It is extensible. Even if we turn down extensible, it's still extensible.
Yeah. We've added there's indigenous languages in that set as well as as well. So we actually do have more codes in there than the international common languages.
So just to confirm for everyone who sees a language thing, there's a maximal binding, as in there's a code system that is mandatory that you can't undo. So and therefore any value set you use in it is really at minimum extensible. Whether or not you say it's preferred or anything else, it's always extensible. So this binding doesn't impose greater expectations than reality, if you will.
Yeah, so I think that so this is one, I think it's as simple as that. It was something that we didn't consider when we did our healthcare service profile, but it's following along the same methodology as the other profiles.
Okay.
I will move, accept it.
Hang on. Are there any other questions or comments on the proposal to bind healthcare service communication to the extended edition of languages that includes the Australian edition, Australian First Nations languages?
Are there any words that belong in the resource to go with this change in binding? I can't think of any. I'm just wondering whether you considered whether it was appropriate to have some words as well as the binding.
Yeah, I think I'd looked at the other profiles for guidance, and I don't think there was any actual words included for those ones either.
Fine, good. Yep.
There is a refined description on that element.
Yeah, it does say for Australia, which is similar. Just looking at patient.
I would agree. It's straightforward. It's if you've got a code, take one from here, and if not, don't. Add choose a different one, noting it all comes from the same code system anyway.
Yeah, there's no other kind of advice in the other profiles that is
Good.
to add on that aspect of
Good.
languages.
Just
Yeah, I
wanted-
think the extensible binding description in and of itself probably covers this one quite well.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other, okay, so I think you could now motion, Brett.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I just motion we accept that addition to this profile. And yeah.
So you motion we bind common languages in Australia as extensible in healthcare service
Health service
communication.
communication. Yeah.
Okay, who's happy to second that?
I'll second it, Michael Osborne.
Thank you, Michael Osborne. Any other comments or questions while I move to the electronic poll? Okay, I'm relaunching that poll now. You should see that in front of you. Please vote. All right, I'm going to count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll and share the results. There are 11 affirmative, 0 negative, 1 abstain. The motion carries. We will prove that as persuasive and make the change. Okay, so that one's done. That was a record-breaking few minutes for us. Is there another one that might be quick or that we could start at least? So we've now addressed agenda point 6 and agenda point 7. There is the potential to highlight number 5. And we may get through one of these potentially or start talking about it. Who would like to raise one of those in the next 6 minutes?
Could we do 10?
Sure can. Did you want to share your screen or did you want me to just keep sharing?
Oh, if you could keep sharing, because I haven't prepped anything for this one.
Sure.
Essentially, so Brett and Danielle and I have a regular meeting around terminology and FHIR OGs. And this one came up because it's bound. So it's an ingredients value set and it's bound within the IG. And we have some guidance that says anything that to do with SNOMED and AMT will be an NCTS value set. And so this one could definitely be redone as a NCTS value set, like a lot of the other medicinal product ones that we've got. So I guess, what was the text of the proposal? Could you just show it to me again?
You might have a comment that's clearer. Oh, no.
So this would very easily move into NCTS. The only difference would be we'd have a different OID on it and a different URL, different URI, but the contents would be the same.
It sounds like part of the reason for moving it is not because of the content, but because of the system that the content's taken from. This is a set of SNOMED codes. There's a general idea that we'd want to have our collections of SNOMED codes in NCTS. And so then as long as it's good enough, it should be in NCTS rather than here. And that's not actually based upon reviewing the content. It's more based upon the fact that these are SNOMED codes.
Correct.
That's
I would go
sort of what I
further.
took from that. Yeah.
That these are all SNOMED codes, and we do have an agreement that majority SNOMED or majority LOINC are authored and maintained on our behalf by NCTS because they have a appropriate tooling and terminology expert authoring pipeline that does the quality assurance and updates for us. It's more about management than the definition of the content itself. And this one, for some reason, I don't know if anyone could comment on it, and I have no idea why, is the only SNOMED majority one that is left behind in HL7 AU base and hasn't been moved across.
Generally old. It's also I think the definition of this value set's not very nice, and I assume they would clean it up because we've kind of got this mix of including a value set and include a domain. So yeah, I think it'll be nice to have NCTS look after it.
What is that second import? What's that linking up to?
Already a
Another value
health
set.
terminologies value set.
NCTS.
So it's this one for substance.
Okay, so it's a mix basically of referencing an NTCS value set and our own
yes.
include. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, which is medicinal products, and I think there is a value set for that already anyway, but implicit one.
Yes, there is a NCTS maintained value set for this. So I'm not aware of any reason we should have not migrated this over.
The key thing is that there's no change on the wire here. This is purely a profiling piece of machinery to get that set of terms that so the URL that you're talking about, or URI, is purely a binding URI. There is
a subtle difference if they decide to go, because essentially there's a versioned value set reference for one thing but not for the other. So one of them
not true. This isn't versioned. Well, it is, but it's versioned in the sense
it's on the domain
that it's defined by being the reference set, so it would never be updated. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Like theoretically the value set is versioned, but its composition is not versioned.
Yep, fine. Yep. That's good. I'll let the NCTS clean it up. I'm all for it.
Which I guess comes back to the benefits of maintenance and authoring by a professional terminology service.
Yep.
Are there any other comments or questions on the proposal that we move management and publication of this value set over to NCTS and ask them to work their magic, basically? All right, if there are no other comments or questions, Michael, I think you could make a motion.
I'd like to move that we move this value set content to NCTS, that we update the binding to that new value set, and that we deprecate the AU-based value set.
Deprecate or remove?
Well, the wording there is deprecate. I guess we'd be removing it, wouldn't we?
No, we'd have to deprecate it, I think, because it's at 3.
Have to.
Right. Okay.
So we wouldn't use it anymore.
The general, and this is so point of order, there's no hard rule, but the general decision we took out of the last session is that where something is officially balloted and published, we would deprecate it for at least the next release of AU base and advise people, hey, we're going to look at removing it, and then make a decision on whether it gets removed, because we don't know if downstream IGs have actually used this independent of inheriting the profile.
So so I mean, we can't do anything until there's a value set to refer to, right? So first action is get one.
Yeah, so the proposal is deprecation, though I guess you could propose removal, but that was viewed as being a step too far for mature published content in our last time we discussed this.
Yeah, I think it'd be polite to have a deprecation with a reference to the new thing, and
sounds good.
Yeah, and then the version after we can consider to take it out.
Okay, there's no change to my motion, then it's the 3 bullet points there on the screen.
Okay, so it's moving that to NCTS, binding to the new NCTS, and deprecating the existing AU base value set. Who would like to second that motion?
I'll second that, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments or questions while I'm moving to the vote? Okay, I've just launched that poll. You should see that in front of you. Okay, I'll count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll. We have 9 affirmative, 0 negative, and 2 abstain. So the motion carries. We will make that change. Okay, so that comes to the end of our meeting. Our next meeting at the moment is an update on the action items we're carrying forwards and the new action items we've agreed today. And also the intention is to carry forward any of these JIRAs that we did not discuss. If you have additional items or proposals you would like to submit for the agenda, can you please email a co-chair? Brett is always excellent at updating the agendas, but any FHIR Work Group co-chair will work. Are there any other items we need to add to the next agenda? Okay, so no, so that's what we'll close out the meeting with. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion, good productivity. I think we've got through some items.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye all.
Cheers. Have a good week.
Cheers.
Cheers.